You want to write down? You want to sit right? No, sit here and then I'll bring it up to you.
So Rowan, what I was thinking, of course, I thought this at the last minute, which is, you probably know me well enough to know that's the way I think, is that I'm going to read one of the poems that Joe was on with me for the poetry reflection, and I thought maybe you could read one of the poems if it comes up to you. You can let me know which one it is. I can find it and put it on the screen. If you were up for that, if Seneca will allow you.
To read a poem.
Right, one of the ones that you maybe remember him having a particular connection to, something that really. So
Great idea.
You don't need to tell me this minute. You can sort of let it bubble up and let me know, and I'll try to pull it up on the computer. This is going to be very informal because we have no set liturgy today. We're just going to go from text to text and from person to person. So I think we are slated to start at 1:15. Do you think that there are people who
I know
did get the memo? Because it seems that everyone else didn't get the memo that it was at 1:15 and showed up at 1, which is what I was expecting. So
yeah, that worked out well.
Everyone said 1 to 2, just figuring it would give people time to get in.
Great. Okay. Perfect.
You did a good job.
Perfect. So if you can see the screen, you can see that Rowan has joined us, which is really wonderful. Rowan was an intern here in 2020, in the summer of 2020, the very height of the pandemic. And she and another intern, Liz, were here for the summer, and they both started doing programs on a weekly basis. And Rowan's program that she came up with was a poetry reflection that was sort of based on an idea that I had stolen from another colleague of reading a poem over VoiceFriend every day. And she said, why don't I do a poetry reflection for one of those days? So Rowan took over picking the poem on Fridays. And because of Zoom, we were able to include people who weren't physically in CCB in the group. And one of the people who took advantage of that was our beloved Joe. And so he was a regular member of the poetry reflection from the very, very beginning of it, when it was still, I think, only on the telephone, right? I don't even know if there were people on the screen at the very beginning. But it was, so Rowan is responsible for something that I think is really, really important, something that has developed, and I'm hoping will continue even now that, God willing, the pandemic is beginning to abate, which is an ongoing connection between folks who are still here at CCB, and then in some of our residents who move over to Hebrew Rehab, that they can still be part of our community if they're able to do it. And Joe was able to do it, and it was and I know for everyone, I think Fran and Naomi and other people who were part of the poetry group know how much Joe brought to that group. His perspective, his insights, his warmth, and his openness, and just was something that, I was very lucky that Seneca was born right on time for me to take over the poetry group for the last couple of weeks. And so I had a little bit of that as well. So anyway, so this is Rowan and Seneca, who is how old now? Rowan, how old? How many weeks?
4.5. 4.5 weeks.
Eyes when they're little. Oh, wow. Okay.
So cute.
Adorable.
Jim, could we ask everyone to turn off their cell phones?
Oh, that's a great idea. Is that on? Okay.
It's not.
Okay.
Turn it off.
Yeah, turning off your cell phones would be great. And that baby is, oh my gosh. Oh,
Can I put this up here? Okay. That's a daughter, granddaughter, daughter. I'm glad you did too.
is she bothering you, Rochelle?
Oh, look at this.
She wants you, she wants your love is the problem. She wants your
She
love.
wants
Come on over
everybody to
here.
love her.
She wants your love. So Seneca, you like doggies yet?
Oh,
You like doggies yet? No, I think Seneca might be in a mood for a nap.
hi, Rosie.
Wave to the dog.
Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, so what do you think? Can we get started or do you, yeah. Okay. All right. So I thought we would do this service, as I said, very informally, a little bit like a funeral, but mostly like a memorial service, and give people a chance to really give people a chance to reflect on Joe's life, on your memories of him, the gifts that he brought to you personally or to us as a community, and then we'll say a few poems and we'll sing a few songs and we'll end with the Mourner's Cottage, and that will be, I think, good. So, all right, so we'll start, I think, with the 23rd Psalm. So, oh, wrong one. If you'd like to join me, I'll put this up on the screen for you, for Rowan. Okay, so everyone can join together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. With rod and staff you comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And I can say that this was one of Joe's favorite psalms, and he had a version of it where basically every line was keyed to some sort of value, some sort of attribute that would be positive. And if I had thought of it before now, I would have gone and found it in my files. But he always wanted to make sure that I had that because it was really meaningful for him. So I'll sing this in Hebrew. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsa, bihino deshet yabitzeni, al mei menuchot yinahaleni. Nafshi yeshoveh, nafshi yeshoveh, yancheni v'magalei tzedek l'man shemo, gam ki eleh al mavet lo ira ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha shivtecha umishantecha Emin Hamoni Ataruch Lefanai Shulchan Taruch Lefanai Shulchan Taruch Lefanai Shulchan Neged Sochrai Dishanta Vashem in Roshi Dishanta Vashem in Roshi Dishanta Vashem in Roshi Kosi Revaya Achto b'chesed yedefuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti b'rit Adonai Vishavti b'beit Adonai liorech yamim. I'd like to read one more psalm. Mizmor LeDavid Adonai mi yagor ba'ohalecha mi yishkon b'har kodshecha olech tamim u'fo'el tzedek v'dover emet b'levavo Lo ragal al shono, lo asa l're'ehu ra'a. Leherpa lo nasa al kruva. Nivzeh enav ne'nas. Yet yir'eh Adonai yechabed. Nishba lahara v'lo yamir. Kaspo lo natan v'neshef. V'shochad al naki lo lakach. Ose ela lo yamut le'olam. Psalm of David, do we deserve to enter God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Live with integrity, do what is right, speak the truth without deceit, have no slander upon your tongue, do no evil to others, do not mistreat your neighbor, spurn a contemptible person, but honor those who revere Adonai. Never retract a promise once made, though it may bring you harm. Lend no money at unfair rates. Accept no bribe against the innocent. Make these deeds your own, then shall you stand firm forever. So I think what we'll do now is I will read one poem that will always remind me of Joe, because Joe, as you may know, died overnight, Saturday to Sunday, this past weekend. And the last time I got to speak with him, believe it or not, was Friday morning as part of our poetry reflection. He called in, and Joe was just Joe. His voice was a little weaker than usual, and so which I noticed, took note of, but not so weak that I thought anything was seriously wrong. His mind was completely sharp. His insights were right there. And the poem that we read was by Elizabeth Bishop. So I'll read it to you now. And it was remarkable to listen to Joe talk about this, because what he really focused on in his comments was the electricity that happens between two people who love each other. And that was, so his love probably for your mom, his love for Florence was probably on his mind as we read this poem. It is marvelous by Elizabeth Bishop. It is marvelous to wake up together at the same moment, marvelous to hear the rain begin suddenly all over the roof, to feel the air clear as if electricity had passed through it from a black mesh of wires in the sky. All over the roof, the rain hisses, and below the light falling of kisses. An electrical storm is coming or moving away. It is prickling air that wakes us up. If lightning struck the house now, it would run from the 4 blue china balls on top, down the roof, down the rods all around us. And we imagine dreamily how the whole house, caught in a bird cage of lightning, would be quite delightful rather than frightening. And from the same simplified point of view of night and lying flat on one's back, all things might change equally easily, since always to warn us there must be these black electrical wires dangling. Without surprise, the world might change to something quite different as the air changes or the lightning comes without our blinking. Change is our kisses are changing without our thinking. So I think, Laura, you have the microphone? Great. Okay, so I think what we'll do is I'll open the floor for people to share memories and reflections. Then we'll start with Emily, and then we'll sort of go popcorn style. People can raise their hands, and Emily can just choose someone to give the microphone to.
My name is Emily Steinberg Perlman. This is a good one to hold.
Okay, all right, that's better. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for being so kind to my father and Florence when they lived here. They moved in 2006 and they lived here for 12 years, and they truly enjoyed the friendship of neighbors and all the wonderful programs and the staff. And it was really, my husband Rich and I have lived away from Boston for many years. So we live in Arizona now. So it was always a good feeling for me to know that my father and Florence were well taken care of and they loved their apartment. And I just want to thank you all for being here.
Rich, you want to say it, or Jim?
Linda had it first.
Joe was my next door neighbor, and he invited me to sit at his table at night. And we used to talk baseball all the time. And I remember he just passed away, that Emily called me, and Joe just reached his 101st birthday. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Joe used to entertain me and make me cry because he was so sensitive and so caring, showing me his needlework. It just meant the world to him, and it meant the world to me that he was so eager to show me what he did, why he did what he did. And I don't remember what the book was that he did. There was something about this book that was very special to him, that had needlework things in it. Do you remember?
Yes, he actually, in the book, it was published by some folks who would go to Monhegan Island in Maine, and they actually had a photograph of my father's needlework in the book. So some of you, so he was very proud of that. And what is your name?
My name is Linda.
Linda.
Patience.
Oh, Patience.
So, I called him my Joe. That was my Joe. He always called, well, before they left, he was super amazing, always super sweet with me, always made sure to let me know that he was gonna let higher staff know how much he loved me and adored me and I should get praise and
We know.
all these wonderful things.
We know that.
He was such a sweetie with me. And then when they moved to HRC, amazingly, he always stayed in touch. I mean, he called every month, if not a couple of times each month, to ask how my son was doing, my family, not just to say hi, but actually inquire, and always showed, and I always felt his love and his caring, and just sweetness. And I always told him, I always want to hear your voice. Make sure you call me. I want to hear that voice. I love my Joe. So thank you for letting us be part of this. So.
Thanks, Patience.
Thank you.
Lillian would like to say.
Patience.
I just want to remember Joe. He knew my husband longer than I did. He and George Alton were very friendly in the boys club that was on Humboldt Avenue near Eccleston Square. And they all played basketball together. So I remember Joe from that time.
Naomi?
When I first met Joe, it was at the dinner table. I sat at that table, not too many times. But I knew what the Rate Setting Commission was, and that pleased him. But I got to know him better through the poetry group. And he always had these wonderful insights as to what the various connections in the poem were and the various lines meant. And we did not always agree, but it was just wonderful hearing his interpretations. And I will miss him.
So Naomi, he did speak about the women in the group. He said, that is one smart group of women. He said, and they call me out, and you know, it's we really got so much out of that with you.
Other people want to remember?
Could you tell us your name, please? Before you speak?
Hi, I'm Tammy Sadok. I knew Joe very well when he lived here and continue to stay in touch with him. And I feel blessed that I did get to see him about a month ago. I've been sitting here trying to find the right words to describe Joe. One of the kindest people I have ever met. And I've known a lot of people over the years. He had this keen way of making you feel like you were the most important person to him. And his memory was ridiculous. The smallest detail you told him 5 years ago, he would remember. Always asked me about my daughter in Spain, how's she doing? Just a really special guy. And I'm so glad that we had him here for all those years. And I know that he was grateful that he got to move together with Florence to the Hebrew rehab, and you know, he made the best of those years over there. I just spoke yesterday with Monica, the director, the long-term care coordinator, and I wanted to make sure that Brian Murphy knew that Joe had passed, because Brian is the only reason that the two of them got in when they did. Brian came, I don't remember a time before or a time after when Brian did this. He came out to the apartment, met Joe, and you know, you meet Joe. But Monica said, of course Brian knew. This whole place was rippled through the entire building on Monday. he just was so beloved by everyone, wherever he went. So I have a recording. I have a message for him on my voicemail at work. That's going to stay there for him.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jill McDonald, Director of Community Life. I started working for Hebrew Senior Life back in '07 in a different role, and then met Joe. I was actually he was on the interview committee for me when I was hired as Director of Community Life here. And I still have a note that he sent me and congratulating me. So he's one of the reasons why I'm here. And he always believed in me and supported, continued to call. And what always struck me was the relationship as well him and Florence had, and how I hope I can be an inch of that in my marriage with my husband, and tell my husband all the time, you better be like Joe, and I'll bring home stories.
Good luck with that one.
Just, I know you can't, the bar is so high, but he continued to call. I also have a few voicemails, and it felt like he never left this community, and that's truly how it feels. And I've never had that experience in all my years so far here, and he's touched us all in so many ways. Thank you for sharing him with us.
Very quick. I just have a quick story. I'm Andrea Flint. I'm the Assistant Director of Social Services, and I agree with what everyone has said so far. Joe just remembered little things that you happen to mention. And somehow he found out that I enjoy tea. And of course, he was a tea drinker. So he used to order from, I think, some specialty shop. And then once in a while, he would get these little extra teas to try. And, you know, he would always bring me down a few every so often. And, oh, I just thought of you. I opened up my box and I thought you'd like to try this. He was just thoughtful in those small ways. I'll always remember Joe.
Evelyn,
Yes.
would you like to say something about
Well, I keep thinking that I'm listening to what everybody has been contributing, and one of the things that it's just doesn't seem to be real to be referring to Joe with verbs of the past tense. He's alive, he's here, he's touched all our lives. And the word that comes to my mind, I don't know how else to say it, is that above and beyond everything, he's a mensch. Joe is a mensch. I don't know how else to describe it. His menschlichkeit, and he himself is so menschlich in every way. Those were the thoughts that were running around in my head.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Thanks.
Is there anyone back in the back? In the back?
I know, way back, they wanted to say anything. Teddy.
I don't know Joe too good, but I always think Joe could pay much in the alleyway for you guys to read and everything else. And he always talked to me. Then he comes to the service, and he was nice. He was a wonderful person.
I'll say so.
Oh, yes, just 1 second. Fran?
Hi, I'm Fran. I did not know Joe and Florence very well when they were here, but what I do remember, besides his kindness that kind of shone, was how proud he was of Florence's beautiful singing voice. And everybody loved to hear her sing. She sang at services, she sang at other times. And that relationship touched me deeply then and stays with me.
I met Joe when I came here. I was told to look him up because we have mutual friends from Israel. Barbara, do you know Barbara, Emily? His friend Barbara. She lived in she lived here in Boston and then moved to Israel, and she, every time.
Barbara Barry.
Barbara Barry.
That's right, and whenever she came to Boston,
Yes.
she looked up Joe,
Right.
and we would keep in touch. Every time I talked to him, did you hear from Barbara? And he'd ask me. And he was just a perfect gentleman, and I loved when I came to services, Florence would sing and he would, it was just beautiful.
Yes.
It was a pleasure to know, and we did keep in touch when he moved to rehab, and he will be missed. He's a beautiful man. You could be so proud of your dad.
Thank you so much.
Lillian wanted to add a word.
You know, I admitted something that I think is very pertinent. Joe and I disagreed politically at the very beginning when I first met him.
And you don't take that lightly, Lillian.
And no, I don't take it lightly, nor did he. I was very firm. But then afterwards, when I was doing everything I could to get up favor for Bernie Sanders, he changed. And he said anything I could do to help the campaign. And he wrote postcards for me for all these liberal, and he was immense. He changed his mind in a very, very subtle way. I mean, it wasn't anything overt.
Right. Thank you. Someone over here wanted to say, Jim.
Yes.
Well, I'm new to the family. Known Susan, his stepdaughter, for about 40 years. We got engaged in December, and he made me feel very happy. A couple times I was up to see him. I brought Susan up here so we could see Florence and Joe, and he made me feel very welcome and accepted in the family. It's great. Same with Emily and Rich too. I really appreciate it a lot. He's a great guy.
Thank you, Joe.
Anyone else? I know Rowan has something to share. So maybe what we'll do is we'll turn to Rowan, if that's okay, Rowan. If it looks like Seneca might be a little bit in nap mode right now.
He is.
Right, and then we will. So we will turn to Rowan, and while Rowan is speaking, if you know, like Lillian, something else pops up in your mind, or if you haven't spoken and something pops up in your mind, just hold on to it, and then we'll give people another chance after Rowan has shared her memory.
Yeah, so I have a few brief memories. As Jim said earlier, Joe joined the poetry group really early on. And one of the things that really stuck out to me is how often he would look for or consider what was true in someone's soul or in their character. That those were themes that he was often looking for with regards both to a poet and to the people that were in the poems. And Jim asked if I might think of a poem that made me think of Joe, and I thought of a few, so I just wanted to mention them, and then I'll share one of them. And one of the poets that often elicited memories for Joe was Robert Frost. And specifically, he just had these really sharp memories of JFK's inauguration and the poem that Robert Frost had been invited to speak the poem at the inauguration. And he had this full story about how the sun was in Robert Frost's eyes and he couldn't read the poem at that time. And so Robert Frost had kind of improvised from memory during the inauguration and then had later gone back and shared the full poem. So that poem is one, or both of those versions of the poems will always make me think of Joe. And more recently, I think it was maybe on the New Year's Eve poetry call, Joe was telling me that his daughter Emily had just given him this book of Amanda Gorman's new poetry book. And could I please call his daughter and pick one of these poems for our poetry program. And so this had been on my list of things to do, and the time kind of got away from me. And then a week or two later, he was admonishing me, "Rowan, please call my daughter." His memory was just so keen that he knew that he'd given me this instruction and had passed off this phone number. And so I finally had gotten around to calling his daughter right when we'd had a scare that Joe was going to be leaving us in January, which got my act together, and I went out and got the book and picked out a poem, thinking it would be in his memory. But fortunately, he bounced back and was able to join us for the conversation about the Amanda Gorman poem that I'd picked out of that book. And one of the specific poems that from maybe about a year ago, from last April, we'd done some William Carlos Williams poems. And I had thought, this is a classic poem I had read in high school poetry class. Maybe this is one that everybody would know. And it was not familiar to people. And I don't think anyone in the group liked it. But it did bring up some interesting conversation. So I'll read the poem, and then I'll share a little bit of what I remember Joe sharing about this poem. So this is Just to Say by William Carlos Williams. I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox and which you are probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. And that's the whole poem. And Joe just thought that this was mean and to have eaten these poems. But we ended up in this beautiful conversation about ice boxes. Since I didn't have much familiarity with ice boxes, and a lot of people in our poetry group did have memories linked with ice boxes. And what really struck me was that Joe could not only describe intricately how the icebox worked, but he also remembered the name of the person who would sell the ice to his family in the icebox, and how much it cost for different quantities of ice. I know other people have spoken about the keenness of his memory, and that just for me was such a clue to that. Something else I would say is that even when Joe didn't get the poem in advance, I mean, it was a lot of coordination for the staff to have the poem. I would send the poem, the staff would send the poem to Roslindale, someone would print it out and give it to him, all in advance of our poetry group. And every once in a while there'd be a hiccup, and Joe wouldn't have the poem in front of him. But nonetheless, he was able to hear the poem when we read it out loud and still find ways to contribute. And as we would end our poetry sessions, Joe would often speak both about his respect for the smart women in the group and what a gift and blessing it was for him to be participating and in dialogue with all of these really sharp women. And because he was one of the few people who would participate only by phone and without a screen, he would always emphasize with his sense of humor, hear you next time instead of see you next time, which would always, just give me pleasure. And the last thing I would just say is in this busy time, as I have a newborn, Joe wrote and a few others as well, but Joe sent a card welcoming baby Seneca into the world. And so for me, that is a tangible thing that I will hold on to, in knowing that someone who's 101 has been around for that long and is welcoming someone so tiny and little and new to the world. This feels like such a sweet connection for me. it's really been a gift to have had Joe in the poetry group and to have gotten the chance to know him. So I'm really grateful for Jim having made that connection for us.
One moment. Thank you so much, Rowan. Thank you so much. Let me just pull this.
Okay, I'll go this way. So hello, and thank you to everyone who came. So I'm Rich Perlman, I'm Emily's husband. And so today's Wednesday. And we just came in because someone realized that Joe's time was going to be ending. And Emily and I flew into Boston from Phoenix on Thursday. Friday, we saw Joe, and he was like all of you, just sitting in his chair, and then I had a good conversation with him, and Florence was with us as well, and you know, he was sharp as a tack. And then Saturday morning, and when I came in about 11:30, 12 o'clock, and both Florence and Joe were lying in bed, and it seemed you know, a little out of the ordinary, and he was at peace, and he died, you know, several hours later. But we loved him, and Emily loved him, and Emily spoke with him, and for the weeks before he passed, Joe was working on his obituary, and he would go back and forth with Emily, and you know, add this person, and say this, and do this, and the two of them worked together. So I'd like to read a poem that was written by two young men. They wrote it when they were in their 20s. And their names are John Lennon and Paul McCartney. And the poem is called In My Life. So here's how it goes. There are places I'll remember all my life, though some have changed. Some forever, not for better. Some have gone, and some remain. All these places have their moments with lovers and friends I still can recall. Some are dead, and some are living. In my life, I've loved them all. But of all these friends and lovers, there is no one compares with you. And these memories lose their meaning when I think of love as something new. Though I know I'll never lose affection for people and things that went before, I know I'll often stop and think about them. In my life, I love you more. In my life, I love you more. By the Beatles.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Very nice.
Anyone else like to? Oh.
I'd like to, this is really short, but I came here 3 years ago, and I had mixed feelings about coming here. My daughter brought me, and on one day we were looking around and we looked at the apartments, and Sue took us up to 1010. And I thought, well, there's a man living there, I don't want to go in. It turned out to be Joe and his wife. Joe opened the door and he said, come right in. So nice. And then he said, sit down, which we did. And then he said, I've lived here 10 years. I've been very happy here. I hope you'll be as happy as I have been here.
Wow.
And that's what he said to me. And I have been. Yeah, thank you. Isn't that a wonderful thing?
Yeah.
Can you give Laura the microphone?
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Great.
Thanks very much.
Okay, anyone else? I want to make sure everyone who would like to has a chance to speak. Okay, so Laura, you haven't had a chance yet, so maybe.
Oh, hold on just a second. Man.
Oh, Ann, okay.
Well, I hardly knew Joe, except that he was often on our Zoom Shabbat services.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, I didn't know how old he was, but I want to comment or compliment him on his ability to get onto the Zoom and participate, and he was wonderful. So I have enjoyed hearing all about him from all of you. I've only been here 2 years, so I didn't know.
I just wanted to remember, as everybody does, how Joe would always introduce and welcome our lecturers and entertainers. He loved doing that and being the spokesman. And he would always personalize it and spend a lot of time. If he were here today, he would be telling you what a wonderful group you were and how much he appreciated your being here and what it meant to him to have everyone here. And it would be said with such sincerity and love and grace. What a man of grace. He will always be one of my best friends. And I know the feeling is all around this room, and he would be so happy if he were here. He is here today. He is here. He is here. And we are feeling that joy that he brought so many of us. Our entertainers would say, Joe, it's not the same when he's not here. So thank you everybody for being here. And Emily, Brett, Susan, Jim, thank you so much for being here and making this a very special time and space for us, and Jim for doing this. Of course. And Rowan, for you and Seneca, being part of this.
Such a joy to be able to meet Seneca, even though it's on Zoom. It's not the same as in real life, but it's almost that great. We're close to the close. All right, so we're close to closing. We'll sing a song, which I'll put up on the screen, and then after that, we'll say the Mourner's Kaddish, which I'll also put up on the screen, and then we will say goodbye and thank our friends for being here. This is such an amazing opportunity. Let's see here. I got to find it though. At the rising of the sun, in its going down, we remember then. We remember then. At the blowing of the wind, and in the chill of winter, we remember then. We remember then. At the opening of the buds, and in the rebirth of spring, we remember then. We remember then. At the blueness of the skies, and in the warmth of summer, we remember then. We remember then. At the rustling of the leaves, and in the beauty of autumn, we remember then. We remember then. At the beginning of the year, and when it ends, we remember then. We remember then. As long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us, as we remember them, as we remember them. We are weary need of strength, we remember them. We remember them when we are lost and sick at heart. Oh, we remember them. We remember them when we have decisions that are difficult to make. We remember them. Remember them when we have joy that we crave to share. We remember them. We remember them when we have achievements that are based on theirs. We remember them. We remember them for as long as we live. They too shall live, for they are now part of us. As we remember them, as we remember them, for as long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now part of us. As we remember them, as we remember them. All right, so I invite you to rise as you are able. For the mourners, actually, we'll do El Malei Rachamim first, and then we'll say the Kaddish. The exalted and compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the soul of Joe, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful one, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life, and may he rest in peace. And we say Amen. Amen. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Ba'meromim, Amsei Menucha Nechona, Tachet Kanfei HaShekhinah, B'ma'alot Kedoshim, Torim Kezohar Rakia, Mazichrim et Nishmat Yosef b'Marem Neshalach Le'olamo V'gan Eden Tehei Menuchato Ana Ba'al Arachamim Astichehu B'Seter Knaftecha Le'olami Butzro V'Tzrachayim et Nishmato Adonai Onachalato Yanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavo V'Nomar Amen. In the Kaddish, you can see the transliteration on the screen if you're not familiar with it. Yid Gadal, the Yid Kadash, Shnei Rabbah, the Almad Yivrach Yiruteh, the Amlich Malchuteh, V'chayechon Uvimechon, Uvchayedech Ubeit Yisrael, B'agalau V'izman Kachi, V'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach, V'alam Walmei Almaya. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitba'ar, V'yitroman, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei Dekudsha, V'rechu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'yalama v'imrame. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom v'imramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom v'imramav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. And well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you so much to Emily and Susan, to Jim, and to Rich, and to everyone who came. Laura, for making this possible at the last minute. And so cookies and hamantashen and candies, please feel free to stop and grab on the way out. Good to see you, Evelyn.
Thank you, Rabbi.
So-
It's good to hear your voice.
Thank you. So good to see you. Good. Bye-bye, Rowan.
Bye. Thanks for including me.
Great to see you.
Great to see you all too.
Such a beautiful Seneca you have there.
Yeah.
Great to meet her in person.